Well, welcome everyone to our Image Ohio Artist Talk. We're so glad that you're here. I posted some information in the chat. We're looking forward to hearing from Image Ohio artists today. They'll talk a little bit about their work, and please post any questions you have for them in the chat so we can make sure that they answer them. If you're going to be posting on social media, which we hope you do, there's some tags for you to utilize. And we're recording today's session. So if you do not want to be recorded, then just use your stop video and screenshot instead of your face. I'm going to begin today by thanking Teresa Weidenbusch and the Shot Tower Gallery here on the campus for our partnership, this annual exhibition. I think this is our maybe 17th year of these exhibitions.
I did. I'm pretty sure you did.
Years of Image Ohio that we have been celebrating. So we're very excited to continue that partnership here. I also want to make sure to thank our sponsors, Ohio Arts Council, Columbus Foundation, particularly the Vada Beekler Memorial Fund and the Catherine Monroe Fund, the Hayes Family Charitable Trust, Greater Columbus Arts Council, CASTO, and the Crane Group, without whose dedication to the arts and support of our mission, we would not be able to do exhibitions and events like this. So thanks to them very much. We want to go ahead and get started with the artists and maybe talking a little bit about their work. Teresa and her students each year do an extraordinary job in terms of installing a gallery exhibition as well as promoting the gallery exhibition. And the students have been doing some research on the exhibiting artists, and they've put together a slideshow presentation. So Teresa can share her screen and show these images as the artists are talking a little bit about their work. John Fadley is going to go first because he is under a time constraint. So we want to make sure to be able to hear from him today.
Very cool.
Program we have with the students is about an hour, but we have the space until noon. So if there are some additional conversations or questions at 11 o'clock, we'll be trying to continue to stay in the space. And you're welcome to volunteer to go next, or I will call on you, either way. So John, if you don't mind starting things off and maybe talking a little bit about your work in the exhibition.
Sure, yeah. So the 3 photos that were selected, I spend hours on hours driving around Columbus in all different kinds of spots trying to find natural, well, not natural lighting, artificial light from businesses and offices, and to create like a cinematic element that is presented in my photos. So it almost looks like a clip from a movie. So there's more story to tell. I have my own ideas, at least where I want the story to go, but I want the viewer to see my photo and kind of create some type of story that's behind what they're seeing. And it may be good or bad, but I just like to create cinematic style elements in regards to my photos, so I spend a lot of time looking for the right spot.
Yeah, it clearly shows that I love the glow from the lighting that you're using in those shots. There's certainly an element of isolation with your subjects. It reminds me of, a movie set where they've wet down the streets. You're not doing that, are you, in order to get the effect you want?
No, hopefully I can get that kind of control and permits later on, but I would say as of right now, I hand select everything perfectly, and I'll usually take a couple days to think about the composition that I want to set up for the shot. And then I gotta roll call, I gotta text all my friends like who's up for being in the shot kind of thing. But yeah, to be honest, there's a little bit of post here and there, at least in regards to my editing, but to be honest, a lot of it is natural. The only time where it's a little post if I tweak the colors a little bit to kind of tell a story more that I want to tell.
Yeah, for sure. And then this year's this year's theme for Image Ohio was pattern. So we're definitely seeing the choices that you've made in order to illustrate those patterns in your images.
Yeah, you can tell I really love my alone time for sure. So I kind of like to address that in some way. I would say it's part of me makes it look like where it's almost more of a suffering, but it to be honest, it lets me recharge and do the things that I need to do. So I like to kind of express that in some way.
That's great.
But yeah, it's just, it looks like people are exhausted, totally. It's like these melancholic vibes in regards to these urban landscapes. But a lot of the time, I'm just like, I'm super happy that I found something that's really cool in a spot.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we can certainly all relate to that, can't we? Over time in these. That's all right. We're good company. We're not worried about that.
Mhm.
Very good. Thank you so much.
No
Again, if you have any
problem.
questions for the artist, please post those in the chat. Teresa and I are going to be monitoring that, and then that way we can pose those questions to the artist. You could also feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question as we go along. I think the artists are going to be receptive to that. It's more of a conversation, so
Sure.
feel free to participate with that. Okay. Next, Holly Romano, do you mind taking it next?
Sure. So I use photography as like a sort of documentation and a reflection tool about my life and what I experience in my day-to-day life and the world around me. I also use it as like a way to help me understand things happening in my life or my feelings about things. And this piece in particular, my Motherhood Paradox, I was exploring my thoughts around being a stay-at-home mom and motherhood. And prior, I was a full-time working mother, and then I became a stay-at-home mom. And that was a hard transition for me. And so I used photography as a means to kind of document, like, what am I accomplishing in a day? What value am I now bringing in this new role? And also just my feeling of overwhelmed by it all, as you can see. And just trying to help engage the conversation of what it is that moms do all day long. And then also in the midst of that, it's a paradox because while it is full of the grunt work and the duty and the never-ending routine and pattern of day-to-day life, there are also these beautiful little moments within it that you have to really be paying attention to notice, because they're not big grandioso moments. They're these sweet little, blips of moments throughout your day.
Yeah, I think we can all relate to a change of role, a redistribution of resources, and also reprioritizing things, right? Even speaking to maybe your identity as a person, as a mother, as a worker. And
Correct.
when we come out of this, how are those shifts in our priorities going to help us moving forward?
Correct. I was using the photography as a way to help me understand this transition that I had made and understand the value of it, and to also like express my feelings about it. I find art as a really great way to kind of help me process life. And just kind of show the vulnerability of motherhood and that experience.
Yeah, that's great. I've spent quite a bit of time with this work, especially, as we're installing and looking at all of the images. And there are those moments, as you say, of, clearly abandoned. Your children are, covered in dirt or in paint,
Yes.
whatever. But then there's those really sweet moments where they're interacting with each other. And so, in a whole landscape of images throughout your day, that you're, like you say, there are those moments, right, to reflect on.
Correct. And I like to show the reality too. I don't, none of these were staged photographs. None of them were manipulated by me to be taken. they're literally just observational. So I also wanted to kind of expose the truth behind the glorification that we always hear about and see about motherhood. And the reality is that was also the paradox for me, is you're told how glorifying and life affirming and rewarding it is. And yet a lot of it is this duty domestic type work. And so that was also the paradox in my mind of, okay, I'm supposed to be fulfilled by a sink of dishes or laundry or cleaning up a mess. So.
Right. I do appreciate dishes in the bringing order to chaos, but that's about all I
Yes.
appreciate.
Yes.
Some questions in the chat for you. Are the photos in any particular chronological order or just presented in the fashion that seems correct for the piece? And is each photo behind a cut opening in the mat?
So I'll speak to the second one first. They're actually, each one is separately mounted on foam core. So that causes the raised look of each one. And I wanted them in these small pieces to kind of emphasize these are just quick snapshots of day-to-day life. And then, I'm sorry, what was the first question again?
If they are provided to you in chronological order, or just
no,
they feel right.
It was more of a balance, because the pattern in the routine is, you know, the dishes, laundry, cleanup, etc. So I basically just tried to create more of a visual balance, but also showing that there's, you know, these things repeat. So I wanted to make sure in every row there was some dishes and there was laundry and there was, so it was a visual repetition, but also a repetition of this is what motherhood is.
Right. Well, great. Thank you so much for sharing that. One of the artists joined us today, Lance. So I want to make sure he's here and maybe he can talk about his work next. So hold on. Thank you. We're all trying to negotiate the space so that we're distant from each other and safe. So I'll move so that Lance can come and speak about his work a little bit that's in the space.
Hello. I misunderstood and was just assuming we were meeting at the gallery, like with the opening reception. That was my bad. But my name's Lance. I graduated from Otterbein in May, this past May, and I'm here with my work. I titled it Ice Cube, and it is a series of 4 shots of ice that cracked through it. So with this piece, it was a part of my senior reception when I graduated from Otterbein with an art degree. And my whole concept was trash and landscapes and stuff, because I started out with college shooting a lot of landscapes and everything, and everyone always told me these are like calendar photos and stuff like that. And I was like, there's no meaning. So through college, I tried to find meaning. And as I was going out taking these calendar photos, I started seeing all the trash. So I was like, So I started taking photos of trash. And then I felt bad taking a photo and leaving the trash. So then I started collecting the trash and making books with the trash and doing all this stuff. So the frame and every part of my senior show was made from wood, trash wood that I found in the woods. So everything from this piece was found around Alum Creek and in and around Alum Creek. And then along with that, and with COVID and everything, I really pushed into exploring and loving where you live and exploring locally. So Alum Creek is very central to the Otterbein and Westerville area. So I wanted to inspire others to go out and explore the beauty that's close to us and around us. So yeah, that's kind of, it's cool to see how the piece changed from like focused on trash to loving where you live, and how COVID kind of made a deeper meaning and pushed me into the next phase of my work, which is more focusing on appreciating where you live and the areas around you. I'm at 7%, so I'm gonna run and go plug the phone back in.
Thank you, Lance. Any questions for Lance?
Yeah, I was gonna ask what like the materials, if those were found materials, like the wood, like the structure the photos are kind of being represented in, like the significance of that, or I didn't know if they were from Lake Erie, I think you said, or what kind of that was about.
Yeah, sorry, I was probably scattered and stressed. My mind's all over the place right now. Yeah, so everything I made, all the wood and everything I found in the banks and water of Alum Creek, and then like I hauled it out, dried it out, and then cut it down and turned it into frames. I bought plexi. I used plexi instead of glass because plexi was lighter. But so it was part of my senior exhibition, which all of the frames and all of the materials were from Alum Creek. And then this piece was in and of itself. And then with the pattern and ice and the subject for the show, pattern, the topic, I chose ice because it's like you look at it and you want to find a pattern, but there is no real pattern. It's pretty random. And I thought that was kind of paired well with the current times where it's like I feel like there should be a pattern in my life, like our lives or whatever. Go to high school, graduate high school, go to college or get a job or whatever, graduate college, get a job, and like a good pattern, like pick your life. And it's like, no, it's random, but embrace it and it can be beautiful or whatever. So yeah, it's all from Alum Creek.
Cool.
That's great. Thank you, Shayla, for that question. You're actually next on my list, if you don't mind going next. Oh, sorry. Question from John Fadley. Have you considered using your art to push for green movements and local government? Ooh, that's a good question. Lance, that's to you.
Yeah. So I have that's a very strong thought in my mind, and be conscious of that. I've researched a lot of artists who have done that, and that was a lot of my push. I got real into collecting trash, and that was kind of like the green point, but I never took it in a political realm. I created a little Facebook group once, which was like Love Alum Well, and like tried to get some friends together to pick up trash, but not many people showed up. But I did try, I pushed, and there's an artist, I can't think of his name, that did it on a bigger level, and I tried to email him to get him to come to Audubon, but it didn't work. But yeah, that's a good, I've never taken it to the political realm though.
Great. Thank you. Okay, Shayla, if you don't mind going next.
Yeah, that's great.
Teresa will pull that up. We'll pull up your image.
Okay.
I'm happy to report that the videos are working.
Oh, good. Good, you fixed it. That's great.
It is a challenge every year. This is not the language I speak at all. And so I'm just appreciating so much all of you and your patience as we work through those technical challenges.
No, I'm glad it's working now. So a little bit about the work. It's a video piece that's really kind of birthed out of like a place of meditation and kind of a meditative space. The picture on the screen is like a bunch of different stills from the video. So the video was kind of like came about because like I grew up thinking that God was like this really far away, like kind of entity that like no one could get close to or know. It was kind of like, who are you? What is this? And through college, I kind of found that, oh my gosh, like you can develop this relationship with God. And so many times through like biblical compounds of like symbolism throughout it. It's like talking about how like Jesus as our husband, God as our maker, like these really intimate portraits of just like who God is. And it kind of like blew my mind. So the video really came about to be this like kind of meditative space of falling in love with like who God is, and having like this intimate moment between them. So in terms of pattern, I'm layering like imagery, pictures of like someone, was me in the video, but me meditating on that, letters, prayers. I went through a season where I opened up a spot where I invited people to write prayers, and I collected all these prayers. And so I took these prayers and I photographed them, and then I started layering them in the video. So it kind of creates this space where it's like kind of like this history, and I've been gathering them for a couple years now. So like I have this kind of like timeline of different people, different prayers, some of the same people. They give me them every year, they write them down. So it's kind of like a picture of this history, this intimate timeline of just like diving deep, meditative space of who God is, being intimate with him. And I think it's kind of a thing that's kind of odd to me, honestly, when I thought about it at first, because like I said, because I didn't know you could have that kind of intimate portrait kind of portrayed with God. But it was a really fun process to kind of dive into. And like even the sound I added in the video, it was this really old love song back in like the 50s or 40s that I took and I remastered and I slowed it down and had these like repetitive words like, I love him, if you only knew him, I love him. Just like this really intimate language kind of like flowing throughout the video, just to kind of create this like really meditative space. So it's like constantly on repeat usually, just to have you like fall into this like kind of headspace for the viewer.
And I'm also intrigued by the way that the work is presented, so that it is supposed to be not crisp, clear images, but sort of bitmappy and flowing and sort of abstract. And it's very effective, I think, intentionally so. Can you talk a little bit about your intention behind presenting the work that way?
Yeah, so I think too, like a lot of times when you see like Christian imagery, like we think of like the old times, like very clear images of like the cross, the crucifix, you know, just like all these like super strong images throughout art history. And my style is really not about that. I think like a relationship with God is somewhat abstract. So like a lot of like my paintings are mostly abstract. Like I really use the language of abstraction to really get my message across, because a lot of it is abstract. You know, a lot of it is like this headspace where it's not super clear sometimes. And it's like the video itself like is a little bit like pixelated a little bit, and I kind of wanted it to be a space where you have to kind of really look in and like read the words, see the numbers, what does this mean, like kind of connect the dots a little bit and kind of sit with it. You have to kind of sit with it a little bit to pick up some of the wording, some of the phrases connected to the wording, some of the scriptures that are being like flipped throughout the video. It's kind of a space where you have to like sit with it and be intimate with it. So I think in that term, it's like kind of like going along with kind of like the theme of the video.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Thank you very much for sharing about that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next to share is Ardeen Nelson. And Ardeen, I'm very familiar with your work. We've known each other a long time. How many years have you been in ImageOhio, do you think? Has your work been in ImageOhio?
Sorry, I was muted and off trying to get coffee. Well, with the sound going, I can walk away and.
Yeah, right, exactly.
What's going on. Here's my coffee. Thank you, Fred.
Very nice.
How many years have I been in ImageOhio?
Yeah.
When was the first ImageOhio?
We're in our 21st year, so.
First year. I've been in most of them.
Yeah.
I think jurors don't always like my work. So, and things have evolved over time and all. And this is, as I said the other night, this is the first year there's been a theme.
Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah.
what I've been working on the last couple of years is something I call transitory states, which, well, and the other thing is work from the Museum of Biological Diversity at OSU. And right now, I can't get in there. Nobody can. So I can't keep working on stuff in the collections. But that has to do with what's in the collections, which is the ones I've emphasized so far are birds, butterflies, flying insect type things, and fish, which was what the exhibition was a couple of years ago at Fort Hayes that I think Teresa will remember. And I don't know if any of the students that are there now would have possibly seen that. I don't know. Anyway, so transitory states is sort of an offshoot of that. It has to do with, I'm very involved with a lot of plants and flowers and all, and people think about flowers, you know, when they're fresh and beautiful and all of that. And I was really looking at what happens after that peak. And as it starts to rot or whatever, some of the things have mold on them and like that, as the flower changes or plants change and go through a process of going back to the earth, actually, if you allow them to, and photographing them and presenting them quite large. So you're looking at them in a way that they become landscapes. I mean, I've done a lot of landscape work and like that. So all of this kind of connects together. And if anybody has seen the prints, they're 30 by 40 or larger, 40 by 60 and things like that. So you really can see the detail, which led me to get involved with learning new things. Old folk do get to learn new things. And I had to become involved with something called stack focus, which you may know about, which is now real easy to do through Lightroom or Photoshop and like that. But it has to do with doing a series of photographs, changing the focus point, and then the process puts them all back together. Well, because I was doing macro work with things that were small, like a lot of my plant things are like 3-4 inches is as big as they are, but I knew I wanted to print them quite large. And so I needed to find a better way to keep them all sharp. I couldn't otherwise. And so I got into stack focus. So when pattern came out, let me get to these. When pattern came out as the theme, I started thinking about, I had collected a few bird's nests that I thought were interesting, and I kind of reached out to some friends. In fact, 2 of the bird's nests came from a friend of mine in Michigan. And they're all different. I don't know which bird created, what species created that particular nest, but some are really tight and well-formed and others are quite loose, like the big one on this one. And I'm really interested also in the kinds of things out of the environment that these birds have picked up and put in their nests. There's plastic, there's other plant material, leaves and that sort of thing. There's well, just a whole variety of things. And some are, as I said, real tight and some are real loose. So I started photographing the bird's nests and doing the stack focus so I could control the sharpness all the way through. And I was thinking about wallpaper, but then I said, wait a minute, these nests can become wallpaper. So there we go. So I have this whole series of nests that I can put together in Photoshop. You know, I've always been a pretty straight photographer, meaning unmanipulated. What it is what it is kind of thing. So working with Photoshop with these has been somewhat different for me. But I'm trying to create a background that has a pattern. And in that pattern, layering something. In this case, the one that's up on the screen, this bird's nest, it's really pretty loose. Typically a photograph of this, you would, you know, it's maybe 5-6 inches deep. Typically a photograph of that, you could focus on one thing and the rest would go away. So the ones that got chosen for this exhibition, if I ever get to talk to the juror, I'll ask about it, are the ones that are less, I'll say violent than the ones behind me, because the ones behind me have to do with some dead animals. Things that I will find, like in the driveway, we have hawks around here and like that. And I think they get like, I'm trying to point here, see if it works. This is a rabbit head. Oh, that's a rabbit. They're both rabbits. That's a rabbit head. Oh, wait a minute, that one's a dead mouse. And this one's got a little baby bird in it that fell out of a nest. This one on this side is a bird that I think flew into the windows here. I found it just laying outside with a broken neck. And so I collected these things, and it's a lot like my plants in many ways. So is that enough?
Yeah, thank you. That's great. I appreciate the insight into your work and the choices that you're making in this particular body of work. So thank you for that.
Sure.
Okay. Next on my list is Sophia Moffa. Sophia.
Hi.
Oh, hey, there you are.
Yeah. So I'll start with saying that I'm actually not. I don't usually show photographs. These are the first photographs I show. And to explain them quickly, so they're called Western Waters, and it's a series of photographs, and they're completely unedited. The only edit in the photograph is actually their rotation. So they're photographs of very still water along the canals in Birmingham. And so the rubbish that's in the canals is actually what you see floating in the sky. And I took these pictures mainly at the beginning. I work and I cycle along the canals a lot. So when you're cycling, you're looking at the ground and you see reflected everything that is actually not on the ground, everything that's above you. And they made these beautiful but also abject effects of pollution in the West. The pattern is that pollution is only a third world country problem, and they are the ones that are most affected by climate change, and that's where you hear about most water pollution. But I live in Birmingham in the UK. It's like the 5th richest country in the world, and we have pollution all over our waters. It's just less more accepted, I don't know, or less talked about. In my practice, I'm actually a sculptor and a performance artist, but I work a lot with sort of organic materials and on social issues, and sort of taking the infrastructure of nature and reevaluate it to talk about societal problems or human condition. So yeah, any questions?
That's great. Maybe you and Lance could have a conversation about how you can both use your art.
I know.
Yeah. So,
right, I took down his name. That could be very interesting.
that's a great thing about these experiences and these exchanges, that we make these connections, and the more our work is different, the more our work is the same, and we recognize these overlapping themes. And yeah, that's great. Thank you. Any questions for Sophia before we move on?
I can show you my studio quickly.
Thank you. I have Josh Arnold on my list next. Oh, a look at your studio space, Sophia. Nice. And some of the sculptures. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question.
My trial photographs over there.
That's great. A question? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Sophia, I don't know if I missed it. You said you don't usually do photography. What's really your medium of choice?
I was trained in sculpture, and I do a lot of performance and video, but performance is a bit hard now, so yeah, I've come back to sculpture, and I think that's where I like it most. But I feel like sometimes you have a concept, but maybe the medium you're used to is not the best way to describe it. So you have to change medium. And I like that I'm able to switch mediums when necessary.
Do you feel like photography as a new medium has kind of like added a new viewpoint to kind of the concepts you're kind of diving into?
Yeah. Can you still see me? Wait a minute. Sorry. My digital balance have told me that I don't have any. Yeah. I was really surprised I got in. So yeah, I take the camera more for like my personal experiments. So now I'll definitely look at them with more serious eyes. Definitely.
Well, I think access to materials and the state of things being isolated and quarantined. Holly was talking about that a little bit at our opening, that she turned to photography, not being able to, I think it was paint, because your sons are at home. And so, yes, these circumstances have made us think about art in other ways and use material that maybe we hadn't for a while, or are experimenting with now moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I had Josh on my list, but I don't see him on the call. Josh, are you there? Okay, we'll move on to Felix and Maurice, BNSL Studio. And this, I'll pause here a moment to say that this is my second year of ImageOhio, because I just joined the team at Roy in 2019. But we have international artists this year, which had not been my experience before. So that's very exciting. So I don't know how we found you, but I'm glad that we did. So thank you.
Yeah, hello from Berlin. Yeah. Maybe before we say something about the artwork, maybe we explain a little bit about our backgrounds also, so it makes it easier for you to understand what we did. So we are both not photographers at all. So I have a big background in like AI engineering. So I worked a lot with artificial intelligence for engineering processes. Now Felix comes from like anthropology background, and since like I think 1.5 years ago, we founded this BNSL studio for aesthetic experiments with computational processes. And yeah, in this work, I think it's the easiest to refer back to the pattern theme. Like we saw the open call and we were working on the student works, and pattern is pretty strong connection here, because like all these, like this is a computer vision algorithm we use. This is a masked recurrent neural network, which is trained on recognizing patterns, like object patterns in images. And so that's where we find this correlation to the pattern theme. And it's still ongoing. Like we are experimenting a lot with pattern recognition in photographies. And yeah, this is one of our student outcome. And yeah, I think it's yes, exactly. We use no, I mean. It is open. It is based on OpenCV. Like we use the OpenCV library for this specific thing. It is OpenCV, yeah. Do you want to say something? No. I think maybe I think in most of our mediums, like more like new media installation stuff. What we do, like currently we're working also with computer vision on a installation project about like emotion recognition in facial expressions, and how social media affects this. And I don't know, like we thought actually we present we prepare a presentation or something about what we're working on, but I think this is just about talking about this actual work. So yeah, if you have any questions or something.
Yeah, that's okay. You could talk about other projects that you're working on, maybe what's next for you.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. This is like it works like it's a you can actually like recognize also in live images the facial expression of people. Like you can see if they're like if the expression is like related to happy or sad or something. And in this like live interactive installation, it's about you enter the room, like, and you get your facial recognition is tracked, like of each one in the room, and based on that, you are shown live stock, like not stock, like images sourced from the internet, like how people, like when people use the hashtag happy or something, and that's like giving the collective emotion or collective facial expressions. And I think a lot of questions just popped out in the chat.
Explain what we're seeing in this study. And then in the US, there's a lot of issue with computer vision and facial recognition. Do you find similar issues in Germany?
The photos are just taken at a sculpture museum in Berlin, but they're basically just it's replaceable. We're like experimenting with all kinds of material, but it's just it's not really about what's in the picture, but more what we do with it, since this is like part of a series. But this specific one was just experimenting with sculptural representations of bodies, and then kind of like going another step and having a computer trained on recognizing bodies recognize this like representation of a body. So it's like even further removed, which we thought was interesting. And about the computer vision in Germany, I mean,
I think we always take like a critical approach on like how to reflect like technologies, and I think that's like a main point of our artworks in general, because I mean we are working with most of these, like most of the like in general, most of AI, not just computer vision, is how it is used currently. It's criticizable, like in a lot of ways, even if it's like just like okay, you get the, like, what is it used most for? It's like how to, like, what ads are shown in Facebook for you or something, or like things like that. Like it's, but we are trying to reappropriate these technologies for an aesthetic outcome, or like for something yeah. But I think we would maybe, to come back what John said in the beginning, we're not, our works are not like really politically engaged or something.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
No, also I think computer vision or facial recognition is a different topic in the US than it is in Germany, at least until now. But there's definitely, like, I don't know if you heard of it, but in Berlin, there's specific areas where facial recognition is being tested out. So it's definitely this development where these technologies are being used for developing some kind of like urban security protocols. But I think it's an interesting moment that it's not really, it's kind of starting out right now, and it's like an interesting thing where a lot of things in Germany are happening, but it's definitely not, when it didn't went as far as, like, for example, London or something in Europe, which has a crazy video surveillance all across the city.
Great. Thank you for sharing on that. I had Yvette on my list next, but I'm looking through the panels and I'm not seeing her on the call. Yvette, shout out to me if you're there and I just missed you somehow. Okay, so move on. Is Jacqueline on the call, Brickman? I'm going off a list of people who signed up, so I wanted to start with that, but okay, moving on. CG Ryan. I see you. Great, and I should just take a moment to say that the jurors also voted on Best of Show. And so CG Ryan is an award winner, Greg Martin is an award winner, and Eric Homan is an award winner. So congratulations to them. CG, maybe talk a little bit about your work.
Sure. I create collages in a variety of media. I use 360 video, sometimes just images from my phone, images that I create in different computer applications. And my goal is to really reveal to people that how they see the world is subjective. And what I find so interesting about collage, whether it's still or moving, is, to me, it's the way I put together my version of reality. And I think one of the major problems in the world is that people believe that the reality is the truth and don't realize that it's subjective. And so in my work, I'm looking to create works that show the pieces and parts and fragments of the images that we collect and how we put them together differently. This summer, I was really affected by the Black Lives Matter movement and how the art world responded to it. And I have really shied away from art with a political focus because, kind of like what Pippilotti Rist always said, is that even though she admires artworks that deal with the serious matters of the day, that's not where she feels like her gifts lie. And I have really been attracted to work that really communicates the idea of the joy and possibilities of life. But the Black Lives Matter movement was really personally affecting for me. And the piece that won the award, thank you so much to Roy G. Biv for that, is actually a collaboration piece with a spoken word poet, Christopher B. Apple, and a musician, Phil Maneri, who I've collaborated with quite a bit. And I believe that the combination of words plus image plus music can be incredibly powerful. And so right now I'm continuing to work on new collaborations with different types of musicians. Right now I'm working with a band called Masbagwa and creating new videos, and also preparing for some VJ live performances, hopefully this summer.
Oh, that's great. And we're looking forward to reconnecting with artists in what kinds of ways, outdoors, virtually. So that's great that you're exploring other venues and other opportunities. And a recent graduate from CCAD, although.
Yes, I wanted to give a shout out to CCAD's MFA program. It absolutely changed my art world, and I'm extremely grateful. Graduated in May, and my work will be part of the upcoming belated thesis show this spring.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Great partner of ours, CCAD. We love them. Okay, questions for CG before we move on? Okay, next on my list is Kent.
Okay, thank you, Lynette and Teresa, for making this happen. This is a pretty cool event, seeing all these artists and getting to ask them questions directly. That's really nice. I appreciate that a lot. So I took the theme of this exhibition, Patterns, straightforward. And a number of years ago, I was in Florida for some training for work, and I was at a hotel near the beach. And I'm from Northern Ohio. I lived on a farm, and so I'm used to flat lands. I'm not used to oceans. So I went down there, and in the evening after the training, it was getting kind of dark. I always take my camera with me, so I wandered down to the shoreline, and the ocean was pretty active. And I took my shoes off and waded into the waves, where the waves were beating up against my ankles. And it was a great experience because these waves were very rhythmic, very periodic, but the patterns they made on the shore and the interaction of the foam and the waves and the sand and the shells was really quite fascinating. So I just stood there and handheld my camera, set it on 1 second exposure, and put it on automatic or continuous mode. And I just stood there and fired off perhaps 50 frames, watching the water come onto shore and then leaving, and the foam swirling around. And I did this on about 2 or 3 different nights, and even in the morning, I went in and did this. So you know, the waves in the ocean or bodies of water are caused by the pull of gravity from the sun and the moon, also acted on by the wind, the friction of the air molecules with the air molecules in the top surface of the water. That's what's causing these waves. And as a metaphor, I could see this as the push and pull of curiosity and wonder in an artist or philosopher, and aided or assisted to by the friction of conflict in our lives, or conflict that we see outside. So that's my stretch of metaphors for the waves in this piece. Is it possible that I might share my screen for 1 or 2 minutes? I can show you these same images I put into turned into an animation. Is that possible that I could share my screen?
Yes, you can. I mean, according to Zoom, you can, sure.
Click on that.
Can you talk a little bit about the presentation of these works? And I'm appreciating very much one right after the other in sort of a cyclical view, but presenting them in black and white.
Well, there really isn't much color at night. I mean, our night vision is mostly black and white. And so what I experienced was the brightness of the waves and the foam, and the darkness of the water and the sand. So colors were sort of distracting for what I wanted to produce. Did you see that video?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is, essentially taking those 24 individual frames and animating them. And you can still appreciate the patterns here as a wave comes in, the foam comes on shore and then backs off.
Yeah, I tell you, that video made me just take a deep breath, which is, I think, what the ocean does for me. Just a moment of tranquility.
So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Questions for Kent, anyone? What kind of camera are you using?
This is a Nikon DSLR.
Okay.
It's not really a question, but I just wanted to comment. I really love how almost mystical and dreamy it looks because of the blur aspect. I just think that looks really great with the black and white. So great job.
Well, thank you. A lot of my photographs are blurry. I think it's a nod to my understanding of we see reality, we experience it, we live in the world, but I have a sense that there's another place out there, another reality, a spiritual reality perhaps. And so a lot of my work kind of looks in that direction, looking for something else, another way of understanding what's around us and what we're involved in.
Yeah. That's great.
I don't know how to unshare my screen.
I'm not.
There you go.
John Fadley's comment. Thank you, John.
Okay.
Really reminds me of the Seventh Seal from Ingmar Bergman.
Huh.
That's great. Okay, next, Katie B. Funk. And Katie's work is actually hanging near BNSL's and Chaz O'Neill's behind me, actually. So yeah, a dynamic wall.
Yes.
So also CCAD connection, Katie B. Funk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Love a shout out to CCAD as well. I graduated from their MFA program in 2018. And actually at the start of the program, it was the fall of 16, which was quite the political, I feel like, I don't want to say start because politics have been going on for forever, but quite a memorable time. And this was sort of a 2020 follow-up sequel project I wanted to do. So what you're looking at is sort of a digital rendering of what the piece is actually a physical kind of cutout mounted with a fluorescent spray on the back that gives it a glow when you're kind of up close to it on the wall. So what I did was basically take various parts of Trump. I even like writing about like Trump's body like gave me the heebie-jeebies, but he has such a unique shape and such unique proportions, and just even I don't know if it was like a New York Times or New Yorker just thing about his silhouette is like immediately recognizable because it is so distinct head to toe. So I wanted to kind of play with that and see what happens when you take it and sort of utilize it in a collage approach and a repetition approach as well. So this was just an unfortunate jawline, jaw angle that when messed with sort of and flipped over, it gave me kind of a mountain or almost kind of glacier idea or sort of imagery. And it was awesome to see people looking at this in space. So I shout out also to Lynette and Teresa, thank you for letting there be a possible chance to kind of see this in person, because that's such a vital thing for artists to sort of see their work be seen, but to see people kind of go up to it and not really know right away what it was, and then it clicked. That I really love that magical part. And I feel like I walk a line of, I want to be serious. I want my work to be really serious to like, I want it to be ridiculous and be funny and just be like, what is going on here? So walking that line is kind of what I like to do.
I always look forward to seeing what you're coming up with. We've worked together over the years many times, most recently in installation at Roy. And I always appreciate how thoughtful your work is and how provocative your work is. So thank you. And to all the artists on the call today, honestly, you know, I don't know that you get this feedback from people who are experiencing your work and engaging with you, but at Roy, when people come into the gallery, literally they take a deep breath. Their ears leave their shoulders leave their ears, and they just relax a moment and experience artwork. And it's so important that you figure out ways to create, because we absolutely need that. So thank you for that. And even in those moments, Katie, you're finding a way to express through art your curiosity or your frustration or, you know, whatever. And I love the pattern of this particular piece.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Katie? And you're back teaching again, Katie?
Yes, I am teaching virtually in this strange new world, but we had fun yesterday in this sort of same Zoom style. They all drew each other and we held it up to the camera. So trying to find ways for us to connect as best as possible in this very distant time we're in. So
yep,
yes,
must, that's for sure. So thank you for continuing to do that. Okay, next on my list is Eric Homan.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
So this is a hard one to even explain in some spontaneous terms, but this is the best I can actually explain this project. This was a complete experimentation that lasted over several months, working with dozens of different videos that I was rendering out. And eventually I came across working with a slight pattern to overlaying them to create this, as one person just mentioned, kind of a transitory state, kind of another reality, and as another person mentioned. So the way I was trying to go about this project is to looking at it as a sensory video art experience piece that was created with dozens and dozens of moving layers blending through one another into a kinetic star mosaic. And through this surreal, dreamlike, expressionistic rippling of colors, the video kaleidoscopic prism abstraction presents a dimensional, refracted phantasmagoria of visual shapes for the viewer to be enveloped within the moving patterns of light and color. And what was really interesting about this is there's literally dozens and dozens of video layers on that piece there. Some of them are actually really, really long horizontal works that were actually moving across a more rectangular 16:9 canvas. So that's what was how I was able to get the movement of the video pieces as they were going across. So it took a lot of just rendering out multiple layers and then bringing that back in again, layering it again, testing it out with different layers of transparency on the imagery until I started creating like this really interesting sensory visual state from that.
Well, mission accomplished. When I'm here in the gallery, I'm sort of drawn to it and just sort of mesmerized for a moment where I just take a moment and sort of lose myself in it. We talked, I think, when you were installing it, how my eyes just sort of unfocus and then I just sort of sway, and I don't know that that's necessarily the reaction that you want, but it is hypnotizing, this work. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, it's meant to be kind of a meditation of color and light, working in pattern. And I was very lucky that the topic was pattern, because that's what I've been working with quite a bit over the past year or more. And just
layers.
Yeah, and the layering of colors in a way that just kind of works and blends together in a way that's very appealing to the eye and to the mind.
Like a kaleidoscope.
Yeah, very much.
In the chat. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, even the pattern behind you are those.
Oh, these are all CDs, and this is how I do work. I mean, I'm like many others, like Katie. I've been teaching at CCD for many years, and my students always ask me, "How do you keep working? How do you stay motivated?" And to me, music. I show them the background, and to me, music is what gets me into that mental state to allow you to work for hours and hours. And also to experiment, to me as well, just to be able to free yourself up enough to see where things go, and allow to have that iterative process to keep experimenting and then trial and fail. There was a lot of failures with this project too. There was a lot of different versions where I was like, oh God, that does not work after I finished rendering it overnight. But I eventually you get something that turns out and you're like, you step back and you're like, whoa, wait, that worked really good.
We've started to ask that question at Roy, what's on your playlist? And artists who've shared their playlists with us. I've learned new music, which is awesome, but we also play it in the gallery, unless there's a video or something that takes precedent. But for the viewer coming into the gallery and listening to the music that the artists were listening to while creating the artwork they're viewing, makes it a more layered experience, an immersive process. So, and viewers are, they enjoy that. Many comments about, oh, that's cool. I'm listening to what they're listening to, and trying to make connections between the music that they're hearing and the work that they're seeing. So that's a really interesting comment.
So the music I'm listening to is mid 70s Tangerine Dream, which is a German prog rock band.
Felix, is that on your playlist as well? Maurice, now you're going to go and Google that so that you can find out. Spotify, right?
I mean, I'm aware of them, but I'm a little bit too young.
Oh, and the trash talking has begun. Okay. Oh, moving on. Thomas is next on my list. Thank you, Eric. Hi, Thomas.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. We had a great conversation about this work during the opening, so I don't want to repeat my questions, but go ahead and talk a little bit about this work.
Yeah, I mean, I guess something I like to play around a lot with in my work is ideas centered on reality and alternate kind of perspectives of reality. So I've kind of been lately going into these floral pieces. This is actually based off a floral piece, and I'm just kind of like, I'm actually bringing the painting, the image, I appropriate an image and bring it through a processing, which is a computer program that glitches the image, and then I will paint over it in painting software, mostly like just like Procreate or like Photoshop or something like that. So yeah, it's really just morphing an image, an appropriated photo, and my background's in painting. I studied painting, so I kind of like take it this painterly kind of like perspective on how I approach the images. So that's kind of a general, idea of what I'm doing. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is interesting because it's presented here in this slide with clips and just suspended, but in the gallery, it's actually framed in black. And that really does make a difference just in how the work is presented in this space also.
Yeah, I had the image framed. I just use I'm based in Cincinnati, Ohio. So there's just a little photography studio here that I actually got this printed from, and then they do framing too. So I decided to get it framed, but yeah, so that I love the frame. It was really nice to like bring it together and, really tie in the image with the black outline of the frame. So I thought it was nicely done. So, so.
I love the movement of this piece, particularly juxtaposed against the background, which is very, set in time and space, those squares. But then the movement of this paint on it is just extraordinary.
Thank you. The background is a kind of a reference to Photoshop. That's the background on a Photoshop image, which I'm sure everyone knows. So that's kind of, I'm trying to reference like, it's really about like digital painting and kind of like the elements and symbols of digital painting and like as a history, I'm kind of thinking of it as. So, the background of Photoshop is kind of like that, just a reference. Yeah, just a reference to that. So,
yeah. That's great. It's a great inside joke that, those of us who dabble in it understand. So it's a nice that we have with it. So thank you.
So,
wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next on my list is Frederick. Is Frederick making coffee, Ardeen?
Let me unmute. I don't know what he's doing, but I called him here because he got off in the other room. So he's making soup. Here we go.
He's making soup. Okay. Oh.
Reheating soup, actually.
Reheating soup. Okay. Very good.
Oh, there it is.
Yes.
Where am I? Oh, okay. So,
thank you, Frederick. Yeah, maybe talk a little bit about this work, but also in the larger context, your relationship with Greater Columbus Arts Council and your Dresden experience.
Sure.
You've been a part of that program for many years and produced some extraordinary work from your visits there and your work in that program.
Yeah, thanks. We're really fortunate. We've had a sister city relationship with Dresden since I think 1998, maybe even earlier.
Yeah.
And we sent 2 artists to Dresden. And we've had 2 artists come from Leipzig, Chemnitz, but mainly Dresden each year since then. And we've managed to keep that up, I think, till this course this past year. Chaz O'Neill was, I think, one of the last visiting artists.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. And I started going there in 2002 and I had a 3-month residency. It's a really wonderful program. Afforded me, lots of time to work. The place was paid for. I had pocket money, otherwise I had to pay for my own food and drink. But, it was a marvelous time because I was teaching full time at Otterbein, called college back then at the time. So I only had my summers free. So it worked out really, really well. And so I found myself there for the first time in 2002. And I kept going back, as it turned out, every year for a number of years, and built this big body of work up. Just roaming the city, trying to discover, what that city was like. My work has always been kind of project-based, for the past, 40 years. Oftentimes I taught at the University of South Dakota for a year, some years ago, and so I did a really large black and white 14 by 17 inch view camera, giant, massive camera project on the Badlands of South Dakota. So I kept going there every couple of weeks. Anyway, but most of my work over the years has been the more traditional landscape, but primarily the built landscape. So I've always been kind of interested in man's imprint, certainly heavily, for those of you that know a little bit about photo history, it's heavily involved by the new topographics movement from the mid 70s, Louis Baltz, Robert Adams, and so forth. So when I went to Dresden, I had just spent some years photographing the American Southwest with a Noblex swing lens camera, which is a rotating turret that produces a extremely wide angle view. It's actually made in Dresden, as it turned out, but I had no idea I was going to Dresden when I first bought it. So, but I was photographing a lot of Anastasia ruins and landscapes. So when I first went to Dresden, I was really shocked at trying to photograph with this same camera in a very dense urban environment, as opposed to, you know, a natural environment. So it took me some time to figure out how to make that space work. Anyway, I'm kind of babbling on here. I spent the first, I think, 3 trips, 3 months, first time, 6 weeks, 2 months, like the next couple of trips, photographing with medium format film cameras, black and white. And then eventually I made a switch over to color, my last 2 big trips in 2005 and 2006. And I was able to produce, you know, quite a large body of work that's been shown a little bit around here in Columbus, but here and there. This newer piece is from my last trip. It had been 10 years since I was in Dresden. And this is the first I've really shot with a higher res digital camera. I'm getting lazy in my old age, I suppose. But again, wandering around the city, trying to find things that were of interest to me. Admittedly, a lot of this, people will categorize it as ruin porn, but this is what kind of interested me this last trip. And this is September of 2019. I was there for about a month. Always stay at the same place, know the same folks. So a number of the pieces I did during that trip were similar to this, you know, intense color, all available light, pretty straightforward, but pretty traditional photographer. You know, I wander around until I, you know, find things that interest me and make images from that. So it's pretty straightforward, really no manipulation other than, you know, scaling it up a little bit from the file. But pardon?
Where is it?
This is in a.
I'm prompting him. I'm sorry.
I was told.
I was going to ask that next. Thank you, Ardeen.
Yeah, it's untitled, but it's actually in an abandoned train station in the middle of Dresden called Leipziger Strasse, Leipziger Bahnhof, I should say. And from what I was told, this was sadly the place where Jews were collected and sent out of Dresden in World War II, and it's been closed down for many, many years. There's hardly anything left building-wise. You can still see some of the platform and some of the rails, but surrounding it are artist colonies, and it's kind of in the hinterland in Dresden. There's a lot of grown-up trees around it. It's a fascinating place. I'm not sure what else I can add.
Nice. So is the space then beyond this experiencing, you know, a rebirth or a renaissance, as many places do?
Well, since I was there 10 years, it's been 10 years, it's changed incredibly. I mean, that's one reason why I was probably a little frustrated with my last trip, because I couldn't find the kind of ruins that I was so drawn to before. Everything's been really rebuilt. You know, it's a beautiful city. It's, you know, there's been a huge upsurge in dollars sent there. You know, when I was there in 2002, they also experienced a 500-year flood. And one of my artist friends, who was a stonemason, said, you know, all these years of work have now just gone up. And, you know, they had Mozart compositions and instruments at the Semper Opera House flooded. So they had to freeze all those things to try to restore them.
Yeah.
But since then, you know, I've been amazed at the transformation of Dresden. It's a really beautiful city, very vibrant, and one of my favorite places to go. I mean, I've made 13 trips there since 2002. You know, I really love the place, and it's you know, we continue to have that relationship. So hopefully, when this pandemic is over, we can again, start this up again. It's been a really
So
rich
too,
experience.
I enjoy that exchange just as someone who doesn't participate in the program but benefits from it. I particularly enjoy the receptions that we have for the artists, so we can get to know them and their work a little bit. So yeah, I hope we continue that as well.
Sure we will. Anybody have any questions? If you're interested at all in this project, you can just go to my website. I've got a lot of work up from there. And a book available too, if you'd like to purchase one.
Okay, that's good. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Frederick. It was nice to spend some time with this work.
Yeah,
again.
thanks for the opportunity. I'm gonna go finish my soup.
Go heat up your soup. Yeah.
Chicken soup.
I love that background. That's so awesome, Ardeen. Okay, well, we've come to our time for the space. A lot of the students here at Fort Hays stuck around with us, so we appreciate that. Any questions that we didn't get to ask of our artists, post those in the chat. We want to be cognizant of everyone's time today, and that you probably looking forward to maybe getting back in the studio and creating today. And for some of you, maybe going to bed. Is it the middle of the night for or later in the day? So, all right, well, great. Well then, thank you all again for your time and your attention. Teresa, do you want to say a few words about Fort Hays or anything that we haven't covered?
Yeah, I just thank you for sharing your work with us. The show is beautiful, and if you would like to get in touch with me to make an appointment, I'll meet you here, and that's how we're at this point opening the gallery by appointment. So I have to work around my teaching schedule, but would love to have you. So just get in touch. It's on the G BIV site, right? And then we can meet, and would love to have you come. So thank you so much. And it's great to have the gallery students here, because they are the ones that put the slides together that we were looking at. And they will be using your work to teach a lot of students. We're going to be giving a lot of tours. So, and we'll be showing some of your videos as well. We've got to add the videos to it. So thank you, everyone, for being here.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. We recorded today's session, and in the magic of the cloud, we'll have that in maybe a day or two and post it on our YouTube site. So thank you, everyone, very much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great work, everyone.